hazardous. Since our arrival a week before, Willow and I hadn't encountered any of the eponymous semi-sentient death fruits produced from a genotype of Bamilician design paradigmata with knowledge of the difference between good and evil accentuated entirely in favor of evil. Traveling on local defilade, our appearance resembled no more than a vaporous mirage noticeable only at close range at high noon if then. The light bent around us by field subtraction of our relativity criteria with inferred visual compensation added. 100 kilometers journey afoot over the slightly rolling hills at the margin of the plain of deadly fruits was a dried-out landscape with sparse large plants suffering adaptively under intense heat. Our third day in the land brought an intense downpour of rain, sending flash floods upon empty riverbeds with drenching humidity for a few hours to wring sweat and drip salt into red eyes as the Adama sought to restore itself to a drier, powdery state below a veneer of mud crust. The remainder of the first week brought a few skeletal remains strewn sparsely, some with a fragment of sinew or patch of hair or fur and distant flying things that might have been actual abnormal animals. These were our closest encounters with corrupted federal life forms. The Bamilic Code is the way to understand how Bin Bamilic controls New Babylon, Pat, a power to brainwash and control a world for conformity unto the image of the beast, power to conquer the people of the world and reform them into fops of sadism. Controlling power of a political and physical nature requires interactive transitional conduits of some form to communicate power and establish protocols, feedback regulatory circuits, and design actualization. Some political power may be only of a psychological nature on subjects. Even that must have been some sort of means of mass propagation. Bin Bamilic's power is not so far entirely understood, nor is the true nature and extent of his power or realm that could be universal in this one universe. If that is so, we might better understand the relation of Bamilic's power upon the universe, being in time, and discover how it interacts with other universes and what delimits his power from the other universes. I presume that each universe must have a certain high level of isolation from other universes, perhaps necessarily implicit in its construction parameters in order to have an identity as a separate universe instead of being simply a remote aspect of another universe. The physical laws and constant values of each universe may, of course, vary, and thus interaction transuniversally, if it were possible, might well result in absolute subjective universal chaos and disaster if the respective physical values different in each universe were allowed to interact. Questions we can ask about how Bamilic's power reflects his will to power and desire to make everything subject to it should lead us to consider what he has selected to be his bound physical values in the New Babylonian universe, and what reason he has to stop with just this one universe to control, if he did. Would it have been better to add more space-time to this one universe, or to add another universe onto it if he could? Would Bamilic co-opt or subvert another universe and consume, as might an amoeba consume another microlife, or create a parallel universe of it? And what is the reason that more universes to control in a possible infinite universe of universes would be desirable instead of being an exercise in futility, something like living on an ocean planet of icebergs, controlling one and seeking to control every possible iceberg, on a world without any other dry topical features besides a virtual infinite supply of icebergs? To answer that question, Willow, could be something that we will learn in time. Yet you should know that I seek a paradigmatic approach to understand the way of power, not only of Bamilic and New Babylon, but of myself as well. I am straight from the Higgs scalar field that hasn't boundaries. I presently understand you here on New Babylon. Power, as you say, needs to flow through practical means rather than through spooky action at a distance. Quantum superpositioning must occur in a type of protocol or relational structure that serves as a conduit. From all the possible world lines of uncertainty, a photon might appear in one aspect of its potential for being observed phenomenally from a large, unobservable scalar field. So this dimensional pluralism has a speed or location. What is the value of the monistic scalar field potential? Field theory, describing deterministic characteristics of phenomenal physical aspects of the universe, including space and time, cannot just describe a partial value of the larger field uncertainty with the anomalous numeral characteristics. Maybe there is a bit of infinity in everything, and more to every transmission of power than is evident or obvious. We must act upon the phenomenal qualities of matter and energy, locating the protocol Bamilic utilizes to structure New Babylon and determine its range. Willow asked, perhaps rhetorically. Thus Bamilic can transmit energy and data streams through a suitable medium of conduction of any shape following basic laws of physics, and we need to follow leads to discover where power and information is moving. Bamilic is a negative God, So, do you think he would be drawing energy in toward himself, or itself, as the case may be, sending energy out positively and making an even exchange, or what? I would guess that he sends controlling information energy out at minimal cost and returns a copious energy input, a positive value, electrons or whatever, at the maximum possible rate of exchange. Perhaps the entire subsurface of this globe is an energy conduit, giving up positive energy to Ben Bamley from a higher level. I think it's too early to say. Then Willow explains some of the mythos of the bowling death fruits of the plane of Eponyms, lethal and relentless in search of prey. They exist in a plethora of varieties, shapes, and sizes derived from juicy fruit genomes adapted for dry desert conditions that flourish on the Swambian plain. Survivors of the fruit attacks, as few as they are, have described translucent beings with multicolored mass, sometimes with stout reptilian legs or inflatable gas bags that roll the fruits over the plain. They are said to attack in mass at speed, bowling themselves over and through edible targets like us. With the gentle rolling curves of the plain, the sole warning that survivors have had the imminence of an attack from over the horizon was a sort of temporal mirage suspended briefly in the air before the final charge of the deadly fruits because of thermal atmospheric lensing, characteristic of this region. We must be vigilant, watching for an apparition of a fruit bowl if we are to survive. I didn't ask Willow if she punched up the deadly fruit legend somewhat for a joke, and she said, "No, the deadly fruits are perfect military killing machines without conscience or unhealthy members, since they quickly devour their own injured. The fruits of death do not experience ethical challenges or diner's dilemmas with mixed feelings, loyalties, or concerns about what orders to follow. Remember, the primary postulate of military planners, the military objectives, if accomplished, must conclude with victory, and then consider that the deadly fruits are rolling victory for themselves without an other objective than to satisfy their hunger with succulent, ready prey. Each fruit bowling strike for dinner is therefore pure victory. The deadly fruits are, of course, debased tools of Bamlik, synthetically unifying the powers of fruit and human genomes for the purpose of antibody conquests of free political radicals wandering mainly on the plain." Willow and I began our second week on the fabled Swambian plain of deadly fruits, roughly following a broad, dry streambed west by northwest. The sky was ablaze with reds and oranges and high, wispy, cirrus clouds